Hello everyone, Gammon here. So Godzilla King of the Monsters recently came out and a lot of fans started defending the movie. Now this isn't going to be a defense or an attack on Godzilla King of the Monsters. This is going to be more of an in-depth discussion on one of the arguments used to defend the movie. Specifically that it doesn't really need a plot or anything like that. All it needs is cool monster fights. And this argument made me want to talk a little bit about spectacle. So let's start out by defining spectacle so that we're not talking over each other. The way I define it is moments in the work, be it video game, movie, or really any other medium in which you tell a story, where the audience is overwhelmed by what's happening. Now, how they're overwhelmed doesn't really matter. They can be flooded by insane visuals, choreography. It can even be the narrative itself that overwhelms them. So personally, I define plot twists, like say the ending of The Sixth Sense, Luke Skywalker discovering who his father is, and major character deaths like the Red Wedding as spectacle. Even if they're not visually stunning, they are moments where the audience is overwhelmed with what's happening on screen. So why is spectacle even important? Why include it in anything? Well, it's important because spectacle makes a moment stand out. What's happening in it is so shocking or amazing or gruesome or just plain different from anything that happened before or after that it's charred into the viewer's mind. Spectacle is a way to get people to remember your work. They're moments that people will talk about and spread amongst themselves. They're the moments that will be remembered long after other scenes or other moments in the story are forgotten. And because of this, they're usually the moments that end up defining your work, which is why it's very important to get them right. However, we are going to need to make something clear. Not all scenes containing spectacles will be memorable. And some are obviously better than others because, like all things, there's levels to spectacle. You might say some moments are more spectacular than others. Yeah, sorry, I hate myself for saying that too, so we're all on the same boat here. It's a bonding moment. Moving right along, if we made a movie that was visually stunning and filled to the brim with explosions and car chases and all the good shit, but it was completely lacking when it came to acting, plot, or basically anything else that allows a movie to, tell a half-decent story, then we'll be making a Transformers film. And don't get me wrong, there's nothing inherently wrong with that. You can say a lot of things about the Transformers movies, but let's face it, people kept watching them. They kept coming back for more. This means a lot of people went to the movie theater and had a good time watching them again and again. That's why they came back. Now, let me make this clear. Does this make the Transformers series good? Fuck no, they are terrible movies. But sadly, people are allowed to enjoy terrible movies and will continue to have that right until I come to power, and liking bad movies will be punishable by death. Also, just between you and me, I also from time to time have enjoyed a bad movie or show. But don't tell nobody. Keep it between us, or else the death squads will come for me. Having said that, holy shit, I am memeing it up today. They are movies people enjoy, at least while they were watching them. But when was the last time you thought about or heard someone talk about the Transformer movies? Remember when we said spectacle is important because they're the moments that will be remembered and define the work? Well, despite being movies that are filled to the brim with visual spectacle, they're really forgettable movies. And they did not stand the test of time. That's because visual spectacle usually just isn't enough on its own. I doubt anyone will remember any specific scene or plot point from any of the Transformer movies. However, if we were to look at other movies that are built around visual set pieces, movies like Mission Impossible, you'd be able to think about multiple scenes from multiple movies, with the most famous one, I'm sure most of you remember, being the robbery scene where Tom Cruise is hanging on some wires. So why is it that despite being filled to the brim with visual spectacle, nobody wants to rewatch or talk about the Transformer movies, while at the same time a fairly similar movie that's also based on visual spectacle, movies like Mission Impossible or movies like the old Kung Fu films with Jackie Chan and Spike Lee, are rewatched again and again and are still talked about, are still remembered? What is it that the Transformer movies lack that other movies have? The answer to that is a coherent, engaging story and emotional weight. Even if the story is very threadbare and sometimes the emotional weight is just a wee bit. When you have no emotional connection to the people on the screen, when you have no investment in the story, then no matter how stunning a revelation is, or how great the visuals are, or how much you enjoy it in the moment, it won't really stick with you. It will end up being a popcorn movie that's fun to watch in the moment, that one time, and then you forget about it the moment you leave the theater, because at no moment during the movie were you ever engaged in any of the things it was trying to do. All the things that happened to characters you don't care about in a story you didn't even pay attention to. And that's assuming there was even something the movie was trying to do other than, big explosions. So yeah, I just blabbered for a long while to make the fairly obvious point that while it's possible to enjoy a movie without being emotionally invested in it, you're going to enjoy it more and remember it for much longer if you are. Incredible discovery. I know I am clearly the greatest genius of this generation, but bear with me for just a little bit longer, because I think I'm going somewhere with this. So let's sum up my main blabbering before we move on. In order to make moments where spectacle happens matter, we need an engaged audience. And to have the audience engaged, we want, an engaging story and characters you can get emotionally attached to. Without it, your work just won't have any emotional weight or coherence, and those things are really necessary for the audience's immersion. Without the immersion, without an engaged audience, the spectacle won't be memorable. Because no matter how amazing it is, it's not happening to people or things we care about. So we're not actually engaged in the story. We are essentially watching a fireworks display. Also, let me very quickly point out that spectacle shouldn't be used too much. If cool shit is happening all the time, people get desensitized unless you consistently one-up yourself, so you want to keep it limited. Well, that or you want to continuously one-up yourself, but that's really hard. It does produce some incredible action films like Cranked, but we're going to ignore that option for this video. So since we want to have spectacle in order to make our movie more memorable, and we can't use spectacle all of the time, the obvious question is, when is the best time to use spectacle? And in my opinion, the best place is as close as possible to scenes where you have either a turning point in the story or an emotional payoff, preferably both. And why is that? Well, first, like we previously mentioned, spectacle works better if the audience is engaged, and the audience is usually going to be the most engaged around big emotional beats. Second, giving the emotional beat a large element of spectacle makes it feel more important than it already was. It makes it last longer in the viewer's mind, and it makes them feel the importance of the moment. In a way, it's kind of a feedback loop where the spectacle and the story feed off each other and amplify each other. It makes the moment greater than the sum of its parts. One medium I think usually nails the use of spectacle is anime, which usually spends a large portion of its animation budget on very small parts of the show in order to make sure they are well animated and produced. These parts are often called sakuga, and I may have butchered that. I'm not a weeb, but I try. I want to give you an example just to cement what I'm talking about. So I'm going to give you an example from a very niche show and one you probably never heard about, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Yes, I am a basic bitch, don't at me. So, in the current season of JoJo, a villain is introduced that is very much a gigantic piece of shit. He is such a piece of shit, in the manga he got beat down for about 7 pages. The creators of the JoJo anime, David Production, realized that this moment, the defeat of this one villain, needed to be highlighted to such an extent that they have created an entire team that was completely separate from the rest of the studio. This team, named the Muda Team, had one job: to animate 30 seconds of the show, which was the beatdown of Chocolata. This is the asshole villain. This is how much importance they put on spectacle and getting that moment right. And the reason that moment was given such attention is because the villain is such a giant piece of shit. They knew that his defeat would be a giant cathartic moment and will have a lot of emotional release for the audience. So the reason it was given attention is because they already knew that the audience would really want to see this guy defeated, and when he did get defeated, it would be a moment where they would be very engaged. Now that I've talked your ear off about spectacle and how I think it should be used and what it is, let's actually talk about Godzilla. You do remember the reason I said I was making this video is because of the response to the recent Godzilla movie, right? Right? Oh boy. So some people are defending the recent Godzilla movie by saying that all they really want is to see big monsters fight each other. In other words, what they want is pure spectacle. They don't care about good writing or emotional investment. Or perhaps because they're Godzilla fans, or probably even mega fans, they're already emotionally invested in Godzilla, so they don't need that built up for them. And that's fine, because everyone has their own priorities and they value things differently. But the idea that Godzilla doesn't need good writing kinda fucking irks me. Like I said, an engaged audience appreciates and remembers spectacle more. John Wick is a great movie. Without the puppy, it would still be extremely entertaining. It would not be as good. Every movie can benefit from having an audience that's invested in the characters and the plot. So despite what the Godzilla fanbase seems to think, if they got a movie that actually got you emotionally invested in it, that actually got you interested in where the movie was going, it would be better even for them who already went into the movie engaged than just Monster MMA. And as a side note, this isn't something unique to the Godzilla fanbase. It's actually incredibly pervasive, especially in video games. People get defensive of the things they love, sometimes to an absurd level. But please realize that when you're doing something like this, you're stopping the thing you love from improving. You're already invested in this franchise. Most of the population is not. Most of the movie-going audience are not. And the only way they are going to get invested, the only way they're going to become fans like you, is if it improves. If you stop it from improving, you're stopping other people from engaging with it. And that's a real shame, especially if you love it and you want to spread that love around. I should answer one last obvious question before I end this video, which is, how the fuck are you planning on making people emotionally attached to a huge fucking lizard? Not a fucking clue. I'm real sorry. I have no answer for that. You got me. You all got me. I am not good enough of a writer to make a Godzilla movie I'd personally classify as good, or that I would actually want to watch. And I realize how much of a challenge that is. The situation is actually kind of absurd. The characters are inhuman, they can't talk, and they're the size of buildings. The main character's attribute, the star of the show, is smash building. They have almost no personality. So yeah, making a good story with a good plot that's also emotionally engaging is probably a really big ask from something of this genre. Though I did hear Pacific Rim did it fairly well, and I probably should be watching that movie. And also in the last movie, Bryan Cranston did a fantastic job. Killing him 10 minutes or something like that into the movie was fucking stupid. Anyway, let me just say this. It's not impossible to make a movie that will be engaging to both the Godzilla fans and the general public. People get emotionally attached to just about anything if you give it a good story. There are people out there that have married a bridge, okay? You can get emotionally attached to literally anything. So it's not impossible to make a Godzilla movie that actually has a good engaging story. It's difficult, But that doesn't mean it won't benefit from one, and it doesn't mean you shouldn't attempt to do it. And by saying you don't want it, by saying it shouldn't have one, not only are you denying yourself, you're stopping people from liking the thing you like, and I think that's what most of you don't want to do. Anyway, that should be enough for now. Thanks for watching.